Philipp, we're here on this beautiful ski mountaineering trip today. Gorgeous day out in nature, out in a quite, amazing environment, a high mountain area in Switzerland at the Italian border. And we've been doing ski touring together for like 2 decades or so. So who are you and what are you doing for our audience?
I'm a hydrogeologist, mountain guide, and that's where I like to be. Stones, water, snow.
And we're both trained as mountaineering guides, and today I want to have a bit of chat about, on this tour, about reframing complexity and also about mind and movement, because both relate so much with each other and are a prominent part of our educational project here. And first of all, ski mountaineering. For someone who has never done it, what is ski mountaineering?
The major difference is, if you think about a ski resort, you have clear tracks where you can go. With the mountains, you can go anywhere. However, you have to go somewhere. So basically, you have a lot of choices. You will do a lot of choices, but often you end up to find your line, which matches your comfort zone, which might be a challenge, which might be you have to take into account the safety aspects. So it's a lot of things you have to suck in, to digest, and then to take into account and make good decisions. And that's kind of the beauty, but also the challenge of being out in the mountains, because there is not a line you have to follow. You can make your own line.
So it's, you mentioned downhill skiing. For those who really never skied before, it's a downhill ski with a binding you use in the ski area, but then these skis, touring skis, have like a binding which you can open. Either telemark binding like this or an alpine binding, obviously. And then the big difference, these skins here. So in one direction you can glide downhill, and uphill is like a cat against the stroke. So it holds, right? And so what we've seen on our tour today is you can really walk uphill with the skins, and you take them off again, adhesive skins for the downhill.
And then you're ready, you step in, and then you're in the downhill mode, right?
And that gives a lot of freedom to explore mountains and landscapes in winter. And often we're just used to downhill skiing. A lift up, downhill, that's beautiful, that's where we learn the skiing technique. But then out here in the wild, with the skins, with touring bindings, with boots that are softer, right, with the walking mechanism, we can explore a whole different environment.
And I mean, you do it by your own energy. You don't need whatever infrastructure. You basically need your equipment and a beautiful place, and then you explore it. And that's one of the beauties I really like, where you get in touch with nature. And obviously you could go a straight line, but in most cases that would be stupid. So your line has to adapt to the situation, to the conditions, to maybe also your mood in that day. Some days you're looking more for a challenge. Some days you're more in a relaxed mode and you look for a more relaxed line. And I think this gives you a lot of connection to nature. And I think there's, over the years, I would say the respect for nature is growing. You want to be part of it. Still, you want to be part or in the nature, but you don't want to be in an avalanche. That's basically the antipodes, where you have to balance your choices in between.
Yeah, because it's, as you say, it's a very wild environment. It's uncontrolled, with all the beauties, all the possibilities. I mean, look at this terrain. You can go anywhere.
Right. There's no sign.
Depending on your skills, depending on the conditions, on safety, on our physical and mental capabilities, our equipment.
On your partner, on your team who is along.
Yeah. So it's really important. It's a lot about team and friendships and being safe with each other. You mentioned avalanches. I mean, there is a risk always, and we try to control it with the best science on avalanche and snow science that we have. But at the end, there's always risk, there's uncertainty. And we take this risk. We try, of course, to limit it and to control it, but there is a risk that we have to accept that is there. And then the measures, yes, you have a buddy, you have a friend, you have avalanche equipment, like
Right.
this beacon here. Also, just for those who've never seen it, this is an avalanche beacon. It sends out a signal, it's globally standardized, you have it on your body, and I can find you, you can find me with certain search techniques by visually, by sound, and it's really accurate if you train it, right? So you
Right.
got to train it and know how to use these things. And then you have this beautiful avalanche bag. What's that about?
So basically here I have in the top part, you have a compartment which if you release it, you create a bigger volume. It's basically the principle of physics. That's like if you shake different sizes of nuts, the big nuts will go to the top and the smaller nuts will go to the bottom. So I can maybe show if I put that here out. So that's basically the release point. And then
Can you turn it in the camera? So that's
I think it should be in the camera. Either way, so if I push here, then we would both disappear from the
There's
picture.
a big bubble coming out. Right?
Because
Big
I look
balloon.
like Beanie Maya or whatever, so I get that's my idea, you know, that I start to fly.
Float. And the cool thing is this is electric. So the
Right.
new gyms are electric and you can train, you can practice.
Exactly. And there's no costs involved if I want to trigger the device, and that's here the part where it opens. So basically, there's a specific zipper which just by the pressure starts to open, and then the idea is that I stay at the top. It might be that I be transported for a little bit longer distance, but I stay at the top and I stay close to the air. And even if I will be underneath the snow, it should be easier for the others to find me just by the volume. And also, you know, it protects your neck, you're around the head. I mean, it's not 100% guarantee, but it's of
It's
course a
one
system.
measure to deal with uncertainty and risk.
It's one additional mosaic stone in the system.
The equipment that we carry that helps us to manage the uncertainty in the risk that we cannot plan for, like the beacon and the probe and the shovel to dig and to find someone, the buddy system, the airbag system, all that's technical measures that are standard meanwhile, as we wear helmets and so on. But at the end, it's really a lot of analytical planning that we do beforehand, right? We consult the avalanche forecast,
Weather forecast.
weather forecast, read maps, we look at the maps, we take the whole evening to plan details as much as we can. Where should we go? Where it's steep? Where would the avalanche forecast tell us to go or not to go? How fit are we? Who's in the group?
Yeah,
Right, the whole social complexity.
many aspects. Yeah.
And this is, and obviously the weather, and it can change. So for me, it's fascinating. If you talk about complexity and reframing it, it's super complex. It means all the physical environment is distant, it's remote, and there's all the human factors that we have experienced, so we can work with it. But then there's different people, different days. We have a good or a bad day. We have sorrows. You know, whatever plays into it. There might be someone else, another group, and there might be an accident, and we gotta react. So, to me, it's really fascinating the analogy of deciding in complexity, of taking a decision in a complex system, designing resilient regenerative systems, and, for example, ski mountaineering. So, and the planning process. And since also, you know, we both have been guiding for 20 years, and it strikes me as well that no matter how much we plan, and of course we plan these kind of milestones or checkpoints, right? Which we are here. This is a kind of checkpoint. We're stopping here to then see, is the reality that we experience here while we are inside the system, does it still match with our planning?
I mean, that's a strong point. I mean, obviously, we could go whatever peak we're interested in. However, you try to start with a plan, and then you can create, so to say, a picture, and on the way, you try to see, is it matching or not? Is there, and that means that's the air, that's the wind, that's is the snow soft, is the snow hard, all these different aspects. Also in the group, I mean, this is different layers, so to say, but I try to find this match. And then I think this is a core point where I can really say I have these checkpoints where I know I have to make decisions. And you know, it could happen if you just have a good time and you're in a good flow and you're talking and you continue. No, with these checkpoints, you know, at whatever today, the avalanche report said around 2,200 meters in that area. It's getting more critical. So,
and we are now in about 2,200. That's
right,
why we stopped here.
Right, and that's then the point where you should maybe, it doesn't take always that long, but where you should have clear points, okay, and you have maybe your list in mind. I think about this and this aspects, which often are listed in the avalanche report. Like for today, it's a problem deeper in the snow. It's not the fresh patterns. It's so to say old layers in the snow which still can be activated, and you have to look for the terrain. How is the run out of the avalanches? How this has in this conditions plays a big point. And then also with a group, can I take measures? We are now a group of two. The interaction is kind of, we can make distances or not. If I'm a bigger group, I can say we limited only 2 people in the risk zone, stuff like that. So they have a lot of ways to adapt. And I mean, the core part is that you don't just say, okay, I go to the summit. That's always possible. And in many cases, you still have luck. However, in the long run, you will come into unstable, unsafe conditions, and that's not, you want to keep the balance.
And unpredictable. And again, the analogy for other systems, we have a planning process, we take data, we do science basically, we analyze, we take weather reports, avalanche reports based on so many probing and research areas of the avalanche system, and we prepare our equipment, we do our homework, read maps, and then we go, and then we have these checkpoints. And what strikes me, until the checkpoint, we don't hesitate, we go. Otherwise, we would never arrive somewhere.
Right.
If we are always hesitating and scared, but we collect lots of information actively and also unconsciously. We talk about, or look at that snow layer, look at the ice.
Right.
Or we use our poles, we feel the
flip
snow.
them around and see how deep we can stick it in.
How it's, let's say, the softness or the hardness or noises. So lots of data that we collect. But we still say, okay, now until this checkpoint, despite of this complexity, we go. And then, as you said, we recheck. We discuss, right?
Yeah.
We take a map. We have a viewpoint, like here. That's where we want to go. That's what's changing. And today, we discussed it before, avalanche forecast is 3 out of 5.
Right.
Which, and there's certain regulation guidelines that was given. But then locally here, it's so much wind. It's so little snow. It's totally different in this area. It's not a 3 here. It's much less. And so there's an observation we take, and based on this, we adjust our plan. Always in mind, it could always get worse again.
Yeah. I mean, that's this kind of scaling aspect we have to take in. Like the avalanche, although they try to make it detailed for regions, however, they have to predict it for more than a valley. They have to predict it for an entire region. And then in the local place where you are, you have to adapt it and see, what's the exposure and wind conditions. There's a lot of local effects in that. And I guess today what we can see here in the environment we see there was a lot of wind the entire winter, so to say. It's not only from the last snowfall. However, we see this patchiness and that a lot of the bigger areas are not connected, making it giving you a chance to adapt to the situation.
And that's what I like, again, as an analogy here. The system, the mountain environment system, including us people, everything we're talking about and more is super complex. There's a lot of uncertainty despite of our trial, our approach to somehow frame it and compartmentalize it.
Mm-hmm.
But still we have to agree there is something that we cannot plan for, we don't know. Nobody knows. So we have to somehow accept this emergence, these emergent systems. Some things might go in a totally different direction, unpredictable. And what we can do as guides and later on as designers is to learn from them and say, okay, we develop a kind of mindset that I like to call organic emergence. So we organically, we freely, adaptively, flexibly are able, in a trusting in ourselves and also in our team, that we will cope with these emergent patterns that we perceive. And that is something that brings over to the mind and movement topic, learning this trust in ourselves, in our skill sets, in collaborations, in partners, in support, in the team, in the group, that really can be trained and can grow by having multiple kind of positive experiences, so-called flow experiences. And that brings us into this beautiful topic of flow. And again, we have a bicycle example, systemic cycles, which is to me very similar to ski mountaineering, where I perceive flow as a deep state of concentration that can be, for me, two basic ways. One is on the uphill, where, like we just did, we just climbed 1,000 meters and did our first stop here, 1,000-meter climb in whatever, 2.5 hours with breaks and some photos, but like say without stress. But this brings us into a mindset of floating away. So if it's a repetitive movement uphill where I don't have to concentrate technically, I come in a flow and suddenly my thinking spurs, as long as we don't talk too much.
It's all going easy then, yeah. You have that, you don't think about the walking, you just walk.
You just walk, and it's creativity. So I start thinking about, I know, some work projects, or about some people, or about a sorrow that I think through, or about something beautiful I'm looking forward to. And often something creative spins from it.
And I mean, also it's a lot about rhythm. I mean, the rhythm of your heart, the rhythm of your steps. Sometimes if I go ski touring alone, I sing. I never know if I'm singing aloud or just for myself. But like blues music, what the the labor or the slave people had to do. But it's kind of, this has this bass flow. This is your baseline, so to say. And interestingly, if you then come to the top and you go downhill, I mean, you do the turns in the same rhythm. However, it's a different speed. I mean, you make the 1,000 verticals, which takes 2.5 hours uphill. You do it maybe in half an hour in the downhill. But the steps are replaced by the turns. However, they come like step after step, turn after turn in a similar rhythm. And what I think, coming back to the complexity part, what I think often is different, and I try to bring that together, and I know you are in a similar position doing that. I mean, a lot of people have the feeling on the way up, you know, you have more time thinking and are critical about specific checkpoints, but I try to do the exact same on the way down. Only the decision making is quicker. So I have to be aware and very conscious about that point too. And often people, when you get a reward, you also have control the feelings a little bit, still being in the flow, but that you don't get, could I say, overflow, you know, that you just, it's not good to have too much emotion because then you're out of control. So you have to stay in a stable balance. Now we're back to the balance in your comfort zone.
And what you mentioned before, the rhythm of the uphill, the breathing is so important. To have a rhythm, it's strenuous, it's also hard, and there's also some suffering. So sometimes when it's really hard, it helps me to make my mind shift away and wander. I'm not there on the strenuous part, but I totally float away. And so, for example, if we talk, then if it's really hard for me, I have a hard time to talk and to listen because it keeps my brain busy in the moment.
Okay.
If it floats away, I feel like I'm not feeling the pain anymore. And that to me is a practice. Whenever it's hard, I start maybe to count some steps, but then I float away, and that's a practice. And breathing helps a lot, the right kind of breathing, the kind of rhythm. And then what you said before, the downhill, it's interesting. You mentioned the checkpoints. We do checkpoints too, right? The decision making has to be faster. And also for me, the flow is different because it's fast. You have to quick decisions, so it's more intense. It's technically often more difficult. Snow changes, you have to read the snow layer. You have to watch about your colleagues. As a guide, you have to keep an eye on safety and on the colleagues. So lots of group management, micro information on snow covers, route finding, and your technique. And that to me is then another kind of flow or meditative state where I cannot think about anything else. I'm so present, no chance. It's just focus on the moment. And it's so rich, this switch from the uphill to the downhill.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good summary of that. And I mean, sometimes, you know, the cool thing, maybe one feature, which you also can have in biking, but is if you get that feedback from the terrain and you don't go for the easiest place, but you go over a small mini hill, so to say, and you float over that, and you get the feedback and the rebound. And so basically that enhances or gives you the rhythm. And sometimes you have the feeling you don't have to stop. You have the feeling you can go forever. You never can go forever, but you get at least that feeling. And then you're back in the flow. However, you still know, if I then stop, these places where I stop, these are important places, because there, the other people, the group will gather together. And so these have to be safe places. So I shouldn't stop at the steepest place in the slope. I look for a place where I have an overview, where I can maybe see forward what is the next part we ski, but I have also to observe what the other guys are doing, and the safe where we are collecting and everybody, that's a vulnerable point. That has to be a good spot. That's kind of, so to say, every stopping point, I would say, is kind of like a mini checkpoint, because that place should be a good place. Otherwise, it's not good that everybody stands at the same place.
And that's again beautiful that you say that, because at the end, hybridizing science and design. So we have a scientific process on a ski mountaineering trip to collect all the data beforehand, to analyze, to plan, and keep collecting this data, which all comes together in our mental model, which we also make transparent so we control each other. That's a scientific process at the end. And then there's the design process. You say, we iterate somehow, we stop, we test, we go forward, and we might say, okay, maybe that exposition, south facing wasn't so good, so safe, so nice for the snow. So let's go over more to the northern part. And that's a kind of, prototyping, testing, iterating, and going step by step further, because we cannot plan for it, only to a certain amount. And that's a beautiful example of hybridizing science and design to help to develop and come to solution, transformative practice. In our case, they have a beautiful safe ski tour together.
Yeah, and I mean, that's also the thing. If you go to the same mountain and the conditions might be a little bit different, you're maybe not skiing the exact same line, although it's maybe the same group. And however, you try to adapt, and then sometimes it just depends on the time of the day. Different time of the day, you will go a little bit differently. I mean, these are not major changes. However, this might be important changes, and I think it's always good to have this flexibility. I mean, obviously, you look for your whatever, if it's a summit or a place, a condensation point where you want to accumulate, so to say. However, approaching that point, you have to check your things with the group, and be open for the situation. And then sometimes it might be that I don't want to say a detour or extra way, you just walk on a way where you think the line is the better choice.
It could be that on a checkpoint we say, it doesn't really look so good here, or someone of our group is weak, sick, injured, whatever.
Right.
So we say, that was the plan, beautiful, but we have to turn around. Could be, right? I mean, that's part of being out in this wild nature and taking informed decisions.
I mean, that's the beauty also of experience. You get maybe more relaxed. You have a lot of experience, succeeded, some failures. However, it makes you more calm and relaxed. But if you see the conditions are great, then you can say, okay, today we go for it. And then another day you say, the conditions are okay. It's great to be outside, but I don't take the challenge to the limit. I just say, hey, take it easy today. And this is when you're younger, you're kind of more like a young buffalo, kind of running straight. If you're older, you have a different type of strengths with your experience, and you get more serenity, and still if it's really great powder day, conditions are safe, then you might, for a couple of minutes or hours, turn back to the young buffalo.
And that's part of the culture. That's part of the culture, as you say. Sometimes you got to go for it, and you got to step over. So say, this is maybe only one way to go, and it's getting dark, it's getting cold, so we somehow got to push through. And that's also part of this sport or this activity, also of decision making. At some point, there's complexity, there's uncertainty, but we have to take a decision. There's no option to take no decision, because then it gets dark and you freeze off.
Yeah. And I mean, the cool thing is there's nobody putting up signs like in the ski resort, or, you know, it's not like on the Autobahn where you have traffic signs, go for that speed. That's all up to you. And it's your choice. And on the one hand side, you could say, okay, there's so much freedom, it can be overwhelming. But over the years, you find your comfort zone, which might be different from day to day. And that's kind of responsibility, that you stay in your comfort zone, which is not a fixed thing. I mean, as we discussed before, there might be variations within the group, within the conditions, within yourself, your mood and so on. However, it's all the time your choice.
And building up this experience that you mentioned, building up trust by repetitive kind of flow experiences, ideally leading to a positive experience at the end, but in general feeling that we move beyond our comfort zones for a certain amount, physically and mentally, in a safe space as a group, and then get this experience, okay, we get back, and at the end it was so enjoyable, because we have this feeling of stepping over a kind of comfort zone. We have flow experience, we come back and we grow with it. Right? We grow with it and we take it, as you said, a kind of toolbox for ourselves, trust in ourselves that we will be able to deal with new situations. Mm. And that is the kind of organic emergence that we're talking about.
Yeah, and this is carving deep in your memory. I mean, these are the memories you take home, and which keeps the passion alive. And it's different than doing, writing your paper on the desk. I mean, being outside, I think it's also it's back to our human nature, and being able to do this decision making in a group within the specific setting of situation. And that's why we go out. That's why we're here.
Design as nature. We are here on this ski mountaineering trip, and it's basically wilderness. This is totally untouched by humans. There's no infrastructure, it's just us, and we have all the freedom. We can go anywhere. And it's such an intense connection with nature, because all our senses have to be open. I mean, there is potential for dangers here. There's avalanches, there's a high mountain area, there's daylight weather, our equipment could fail. So the connection that we feel here intentionally is super intense. And it's at different scales. It's this beautiful, large, big mountain environment. The views, the vistas are amazing. It's all covered in snow, so it's so clean. And there's so much microstructure in the snow, in the snow layer, which we learn to read for safety, for pleasure, for the snow type, if it's soft and powdery or hard or windblown or packed. And so we learn to read it. It's a very distinctive, for me, very deep connection with nature on this trip. And just when I followed you, you stopped a couple of times because you saw these details of tracks from wild animals.
Right. So basically, we saw kind of a
snow grouse.
A snow grouse, or we saw the chamois, which was crossing our line, or then that ice, which was on a pretty interesting spot, pretty exposed to the wind, and where very likely a small spring emerged from the ground, and that area the snow was blown away, which in other years might be covered by snow. However, I mean, this was almost a place where you could skate. And obviously, as a hydrogeologist working in the drinking water domain, that's kind of attracting you. I mean, the terrain features. However, to see that on that exposed spot, it's pretty fascinating still. And I mean, you know, you have all these different layers and you have this blue ice. I mean, it's not a glacier, but
it's beautiful. It jumps in our eyes, both the big pictures, but also the small details. And we can take breaks. We're not in a race.
Right.
So as we sit here, we look at the lichens, we look at the scenery, but then we are really interested, as you said, you know a lot about hydrogeology. So we just take some time to explore this icy part and think about, discuss where does it come from. Same time with different animals living up here. And a beautiful tool as well for me to focus, which is also kind of flow, is photography. Because photography, it helps me to not just say, okay, nice, we go further, but I use my camera and you as well, right? It's a shared hobby that we have to find the right angle, the focus, the light, to see, okay, how it is interesting, what are the golden rules, you know, of geometries. And so it's really a tool for me, I guess for you too, to focus on something and capture it. Maybe you never look again at the photo, but it's really a tool to focus in that moment, to be present.
Yeah, and then you look for the light and for the shadows, where you see the contours, where the landscape is not 2D, but going into 3D. And these contrast points. I mean, obviously, shadow and sun, the snow might change.